Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on Ram's Table. I'm your host, Tatiana Giddings, with Crystal Hernandez. So, Crystal, what's on our agenda today?
Well, today we are going to make a stop at Career Services. We have information for you about resumes, internships, and interview preparations, the whole 9 yards.
And what better way to get this information across to students than to have our guest, Director for Career Services, Michael Gatton, to join us and answer students' questions on career.
Please welcome our guest, Michael Gatton.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Gatton, for coming here today. Now, let's get into our first topic, resumes, since resumes are the first impression to your potential employer. So, tell us, what do employers look for in a resume?
Well, again, thank you for having me. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to talk about career services and what we have to offer, resumes, mock interviews, and the like. But specifically, what do employers look for on a resume? So they look for a number of things. The main thing is experience. What have you been doing? Have you had an internship? Have you had an opportunity to do a practicum or some other experiential learning opportunity? Right now, students such as yourself, this is a great experience, something that you definitely want to be putting on your resume. What have you been doing as part of your major course of work? So have you gotten to be a student employee? Have you had a part-time job? So experience. Other than that, what have you done as your education? Maybe you've done a major academic project, like the semester-long group projects, right? If you're in a technical class, did you create a program, or did you do research with an instructor? So experience.
Okay, so with all that information that you provided to us, is there a checklist for students? Is there a checklist they can come to Career Service and kind of get that checklist for a good resume?
So checklist, I'm sure you could find a checklist online, something that's a general guideline. When you come to our office, we're going to want to sit down with you. We want to get to know you. When we set an appointment in our office, we're going to give you an hour, and we're going to go over what it is you're looking for, what you're trying to apply for, what and how we can best direct you towards the specific job that you're going for. Not just a general, guideline checklist. We want something that's specific for you. But yes, you could find something general if you want. But the main things, education, do you have multiple degrees? What is your experiences? Do you belong to any professional organizations? Do you belong to any student organizations while you're in school? Things like that, but yes.
Now, I have to ask, what are some of the things that you don't want to include in your resume? What are the things that you want to try to avoid?
That's a good question. There's a broad set of general things that are expected on the resume, and it depends on where you're going, right? In general, you don't want to put that photograph on your resume. Okay, however, if you're going into a field where you're going to be the face of the organization, you might want to have a headshot. If you're going to be, if it's part of acting, or maybe a position like this where you're on camera, or you're doing PR for the organization, or you're speaking for the group, then you might put a photograph.
Well, I do have one question. Today when I was talking about resumes in class, someone was like, don't put your GPA on your resume. So is that something you don't do?
It's not something you do once you've been a professional and you're on your third job. But when you're leaving for your first internship, or you're leaving for your first job after college, if your if your GPA is a 3.0 or above, it's okay to put it on there. If it's not a 3.0 or above, you might consider not putting it on there. But it is an opportunity. It's a bragging point if it's a good GPA. It's not the first and last and only thing an employer is going to make a decision on, but it is a point to put on there.
Now, I believe you brought in a mock resume for us to look at.
Well, I do have a sample, sort of a what you might not want to do. Don't know if you can see it all the way from over there. But that's for the first thing I would say about that sample though, if somebody brought to me that, I would say that's fantastic, great. You got something down on paper. Just like when you write a paper for your class, you get it all out and then you edit it, okay? So, if I may. So, we have what we would here, a lot of what we would call negative space or blank space. You've got almost 3 inches before you start talking about yourself. We want to use this whole document, okay? So, I'm going to move this up. The general rule of thumb is you want an inch margin all the way and around. So you've got 3 inches here, you got a 1/4 inch over here, you got 1.5 inches over here. It's not symmetrical, it's not consistent. And so we want 1 inch margins all the way around. In general, this font is a little bit too small. You got to think about the multiple audiences that you have looking at your resume. You may have some people with slightly older eyes, okay, and they can't see a 8-point font, okay. So a good starting place is 12-point font, okay. So the good thing about the 12-point font and the 1 inch margins, if you find that you're slipping over to the second page, maybe you shrink the margin a little bit or shrink the font a little bit, that'll help pull the information back up on the page. It's not wrong to have a 2-page resume, especially for your first resume, because you're talking about some maybe work and your academic experience. But in general, it's a 1-page resume per 10 years of relevant experience. Another thing here is there's a little bit of inconsistency with, sometimes you're using bullet points, sometimes you're using dashes, some odd underlining, okay, in spaces. Information is kind of split in multiple locations. There's not a flow, okay? So in general, I recommend not using like a Word template. Start on a blank document, and you are in charge of your own new sample, your own new template. Even if you like the way it looked as the sample, don't use theirs because you're locking into their formatting. And you want to be free and to do your own thing, because they may have they may be talking about something that's stuck in this formatting that you want to talk about that you can't get in there. If it doesn't, you can't make this one. Maybe doesn't let you talk about leadership opportunity. This one doesn't let you add in your volunteer experience. This one doesn't let you add in maybe that internship the way you want. Okay. The other thing is we want to do things in reverse chronological order. We want your most recent education at the top of your list. We want the most recent job at the top of your list. It makes sense. 10 years from now, they don't need to know the student employment job you had, right? They want to know what you most recently did, okay? So those are some of the general things that we would, talk about, but then we would get down in, so when you make an appointment with our office, we would get down to it with you, and I brought a sample of, this is, again, I don't like the word template, it's a sample, okay? Something that is broadly generalizable to all of our majors, but when we would work with you, we would talk about what is your major? What have you done? What are your goals? How can we get that on the paper to best represent your specific experience in a way that's best represents you to the employer, okay? So again, I don't know if you can see that from here. This one happens to be a 2-page resume, but it's a good general sample that we work on to start because it has a lot of that space for leadership and honors and awards and professional organizations, things like that that you've been doing while you're in school. You want to highlight all of that and not forget it. And if it's not on the resume, they don't know to make a decision based on that.
That's so true. So now that we've worked on polishing the resume, let's move on to internships.
Okay.
So what should students be aware of when looking for internships?
I think the biggest and first thing to be aware on internships are deadlines. And getting out well ahead of an internship deadline. So if you want a summer internship, oftentimes the due date for your application is in previous October, okay? So you want to start like 2 semesters out. So if you want to fall, you need to be 2 semesters and prior to that. It's very difficult if you come to me the last semester of your, senior year and say, I want an internship. It can be done, but it's going to be difficult. And so they're going to have preferred deadlines and they're going to have last minute deadlines. You always want to have your stuff ready to go at the preferred deadline because they may fill all the positions they have from that first group. Okay, people that turn it in late, they may never get even to looking at their resume. Internships are a job search. Okay, so it's learning how to do a good job search, learning what it, you went to school, you're getting a degree. What was your plan in choosing that degree? What did you want to do with it when you decided to choose that degree, right? That knowledge, knowing yourself, knowing the market of the, and the work world that you want to enter yourself into. So the internship is your chance to get a first taste into that world that you're thinking about joining. And it's okay if you do multiple internships. Employers like that if you've got multiple sets of experience.
And I can attest to that last minute internship search because I'm going into my final semester of my senior year and I needed an internship. And that was a very difficult process. Like you said, you'll get through it, but it's going to take some work. So it did take a lot of work to get that.
Right, yes. And it's never too early to start. You can start as a freshman so that oh, this organization that I want an internship with, they do offer a regular internship at this time, so you're ready for it the next time it comes up. These are great questions. Thank you.
Now, we know that a lot of people apply for internships, so what are some of the things that can help you stand out?
So again, going back to finding experiences and being able to explain those experiences, being able to demonstrate your value to the employer. Your resume is going to get you the interview, right? But how you describe yourself takes it to that next level. So what have you been doing? Being able to describe maybe some difficult experiences. Have you ever had a difficult day of production, and how did you get through that production and make it happen on time, right? So being able to explain yourself is going to be the way to help yourself stand out once you're at that interview.
Right, and you just have that issue now, so I'll just put that, I'll work through that.
Absolutely.
So I have heard that a lot of people, graduate students, or students who have graduated, they always tell me apply for as many internships as you can. So what would you say? How often would you say we should apply for internships?
So again, I'm going to go back to say this is a job search. Internship is a job search. Okay, so doing a good job search, doing a good internship search. You should do a focused internship search. Okay, if you apply to anything and everything, well, you're going to get a callback, but it might not be the callback that you were wanting because you had a preference. You could narrow your set of preferred preferences and only apply to those, and really put your energies into having a really good resume that speaks to that specific internship, and having a good prepared interview for that particular internship. If you're applying to 20, 30, 40, 50, who knows how many jobs or internships, that's going to spread your search thin. It's going to spread your energies thin. It's good to have options, but looking for something a little bit more focused, because this particular experience is going to help you get that job after graduation, whereas maybe this other internship, though is easier to get, may not be as directly reflective of where you're planning on going. Okay, even if this one pays $30 an hour and this one pays $15 an hour, if this one really gets you that good set of experiences, it's temporary, so maybe you take the $15 an hour internship because it sets you up for the thing later.
That's so true. Because I was actually wondering about that when I applied. I got the internship that I wanted. I got it, but it's unpaid. But it gives me a step into PR in healthcare. So I'm still trying to weigh out my options, and that right there kind of solidified what I'm gonna do.
Now, to go with, let's say that you do get a call back from the internship that you applied to, and you know that the interview process is up next. So what are some of the ways that you can dress to present yourself in a good manner to your employer?
Generally speaking, you can't be too formal, right? For men, a suit and a tie and dress shoes and a belt and what have you. Ladies, a nice suit pants or a nice work appropriate dress, blouse or skirt. Generally, again, you can't go wrong with being too formal. Things have gotten a little bit more relaxed in some places, in some environments. You notice I'm not wearing a tie today. If I don't have to wear a tie, I'm not, if you told me I had to wear a tie, I would have worn a tie. Nobody said so. But to prepare for an interview, I recommend, if you don't know where the place is, you physically drive out to that location and you see where to park, and maybe you can get inside and see where the reception area is, and you can also see how people are dressed, right? You get a sense of what the environment is, knowing that you're going to have an interview. For men, you can't go wrong if you don't have a suit, jacket, at least wearing a long sleeve button-up shirt with a tie that's fine. For ladies, a nice blouse and a skirt. For ladies, you want your hair pulled back. They want to be able to see your face, especially in these days where half our face is covered. We want to be able to see more of our face. Jewelry is limited. You don't want to wear a lot of perfume. You want to be sensitive to the people in the room that might have sensitivity to that. Again, limited jewelry, nothing big and flashy. You don't want to be remembered as the person that had all the jewelry. You want to be remembered as the person who had the good interview.
And so when I was writing that question, I was like, well, that's pretty obvious, but I'm actually glad I asked, because down to the perfume, because I am an obsessive person. I spray a lot of perfume.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I wouldn't want it to have gone in there and made someone allergies act up or something.
Right.
So since we are asking these obvious questions, how should someone conduct themselves during an interview?
It's a great question. You want to be professional. You want to make sure that you are addressing everybody in the room, making good eye contact. You may have somebody often we're doing panel interviews these days where it's more than one person in the interview. So you may have a person who's silent, doesn't ask any questions, but you still want to address them because that might be the boss's boss's boss who's just sitting in to assess the situation, right? So again, if you have the chance, nowadays we're not necessarily shaking hands as we used to be, but see the room out, see how everybody else is behaving. If they're shaking hands and you feel comfortable, you shake hands on the greeting as well as as leaving. One of the a couple of the services that we offer in our office is we will do a mock interview with you. Okay, so you make an appointment with our office. You'd let us know what is the job you're applying for, and when you come in, all of our appointments we schedule an hour. So we try to prepare with a set of questions that's relevant to the job you're going for, and then I sit across from you, and I look, kind of stern, and we have a good interview where I pretend to be the person you're interviewing with, maybe practice what those nerves feel like a little bit, and then we'll go over your result, the assessment of what I saw during, how did you answer the questions, could you have answered them in a different way, did you know you twirled your hair, or whatever. We would try to give that kind of feedback. We also have a product off of our website called Big Interview, and you can go on there and practice your interview. You can take the default set of questions, or you can pick your own set of questions. It'll let you set up as easy, medium, and hard, and you go through and you can just practice going over and over again, seeing those things for yourself. Do I mess with my hair? Do I say a lot, right? And then if you like, you can share it with a friend, you can share it with your faculty member, you can make an appointment with us, we can go over what you did. So conducting yourself, so the question is conducting yourself in the resume. You have a lot of that you can do beforehand to practice, is essentially what I'm saying. Yeah.
So I think that giving that stern look will kind of prepare you for someone who's fluffier if they are fluffier. So it kind of gives you all the bases.
And yeah, really, it's just so nerve-wracking during the interview because you're worried about what they think of you.
Yeah, oftentimes people think they behave in a certain way that doesn't necessarily present. You may be aware of it, but the people in the room wouldn't maybe notice it. Like, oh, I thought I was nervous. Well, your voice didn't sound nervous, and you didn't behave nervous. So sometimes it's good to have somebody else confirm for you that you're doing all right. Okay, here's what we can do to take it to the next level.
Okay, so sometimes you get to that point where you're at the end of the interview, and then they say, do you have any questions to ask us? What are questions Or what example of questions should we ask?
Absolutely, always you need to have questions prepared. It's almost standard to have those, that final question put in front of you. You're going to get a feel of how the interview goes. Some of your questions may be answered during the interview, and you can reflect back on the fact that you did have a question. You know, I was going to ask a little bit about how the day in the life of this person in this role behaves, but you answered that, I think. If they didn't ask that question or didn't give you that kind of set of information, that's a good question. So can you tell me what the day of the life of a person in this role, what that looks like? What are the deliverables over a measurable time? So do y'all do quarters? Do you have yearly deliverables? You know, it depends on the job, essentially, is what I'm saying on some of those questions. Questions that would really literally help you make a decision for yourself, because this is an interview for you as well, right? Is there something you really need to know to help you make that decision, right? So they said in the job description 80% travel or 80% travel. Tell me what 80% travel actually means. You know, does that help you understand that you'll never see your wife and kids or husband and kids, or you know, whatever, or you'll never see family, let's say that. So it's your chance to find out that kind of information. You don't want to ask questions that you could have found out through the job description or through your own research online. So you don't want to ask things like, so when's like the vacations, right? You can find that out on the HR website.
Right.
What does my health benefits look like? Those are not questions those are questions that you get after an offer when you're talking to HR. So you do want to ask the questions that will help you give a greater understanding. You also get a chance to ask leading questions like, well, I was hoping you asked me this, so you get a chance to brag about yourself. Okay? We didn't cover this thing that really shows me where I excel, and I want to tell you about that. So if you have that opportunity, this is your way to end it big for them, a way to get to brag about how you are the right candidate.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Gadden, for coming out and sharing these tips. I know myself, I'm going to go back and watch this video so that I can take it all in as a viewer.
Okay.
But I know there's so many more tips that you can give. So do you want to tell the students where they can find your office?
Absolutely, thank you for that. So we're on the second floor of the Martin Center. So when you take the stairs or get off the elevator, we are directly around the corner on the far back wall opposite of the ballrooms. We unfortunately, we can't take walk-in appointments. We're just very scheduled. So when you do, we would work with you to set an appointment. That's when we can give you that intentional time. Like I said, we set aside an hour. But we use a product called Handshake. That is our job board, and it's our appointment setting software. So we would have you set up your appointment or set up your account on Handshake if you haven't already done that. But then if you have, then schedule the appointment through that.
All right, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us today on Rams Tables, our career services topic.
Don't forget to follow us on our social media handles on Facebook at The Rambler, on YouTube at The Rambler TWU, or the TWU Rambler, and on Twitter and Instagram at The Rambler TWU. My name is Crystal Hernandez.
And I'm Tatiana Giddings,
And this is Rams
TV.
TV.